Welcome to this special edition of the Casual Shooters Podcast. With me tonight, I have three guests, all USPSA board directors. You have Leif Kunkel, who's the Area 5 director, Billy Harrington, Area 6, and Ian Parker, the Area 2 director. And we're going to be talking about the proposal for the separate categories, whether it's ladies, juniors, seniors, and so on and so forth. Leif reached out to me and said, "Hey, we'd like to get some information out to the general membership. We're just trying to hit some key points and clarify a few items since the proposal for the different categories popped up on the USPSA website." So with that, well, gentlemen, first off, before I change the screen, how's everybody doing?
Not bad.
Well.
Excellent. I'm well, thanks. Hope everybody had a happy and safe holiday.
It's very good.
All right. So I'm just going to very quickly read through. I'm not going to read the entire proposal. That'll bore everybody to death. But I'll just hit on a couple key points and then I'll turn it over to Ian. So Appendix A2, USPSA, yeah, I said that right. Recognition, proposed, individual categories. Categories approved for individual recognition are as follows. Lady, eligibility, a competitor individually registered as lady, in quotes, is a person who is registered female at the time of birth and who has two X chromosomes. Applicable documentation for that would be a physical birth certificate or an image of a birth certificate. Now, the rest are pretty much all the same in that the requirements are all a government-issued ID with the date of birth showing or a physical birth certificate, and there's junior. You must be under 18 on the first day of the match. So if the match is a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you've got to be 17 on Friday. Even if you turn 18 on Saturday, you're still considered a junior. Correct. Senior 55 to 64, super senior 65, 69, distinguished senior 70 and older. Military, I feel like that should be pretty self-explanatory. You're an active duty member of that one of the major services or reserve, National Guard, and I would assume Coast Guard in there as well. Law enforcement, full-time, part-time, or reserve that has arrest powers. Match directors may request applicable documentation of category eligibility from any competitor who selects a category at registration. If no documentation of category eligibility is produced, the match director may refer the instance to the Category Eligibility Committee for further investigation. Ian, is there something you would like to clarify in there?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things we've seen through the feedback we've gotten so far is that there's a little bit of a misunderstanding of exactly what this is proposing and what the change really encompasses here. This isn't a new system where every time you go to a match at registration, if you've selected one of these categories, you're going to have to produce this documentation at the sign-in table at your local match when you go to registration at your major or whatever. We already had requirements for ID for categories before. And the idea is sort of as often as you got carded before, you're going to have to produce documentation going forward. And the match directors may request. That may is doing a lot of the heavy lifting in that sentence there. This is up to MD discretion to ask for it when they want to verify it. And the end of that sentence, it says selects a category at registration. That doesn't mean when you get to registration, you're going to have to produce your thing. It means that you've selected a category when you register, right? If you go on practice score, you fill out your form, you choose the junior category, you show up to registration, you're very obviously 12 years old, nobody's going to have a question. If you show up at registration, you selected junior, and you've got gray hair and a beard, well, then maybe the MD, yeah, David, I don't think you're going to pass for a junior.
I feel attacked. Mm-hmm. Okay, now, and it's probably a point I hadn't even considered, but you're right. I mean, there's the legal definition of may and shall are completely different. Whereas may, down below, match director may refer, he can ask for something, he might. Whereas shall, which is nowhere in this document anywhere, says they will ask you for these documents. So, okay, that's a good distinguishment there of the differences. Now, I noted that, and for everybody to know, I had a list of questions that I sent out to all of these guys beforehand, so that they weren't trying to research answers or figure something out off the top of their head. They would know what the questions were coming, and they would have answers to be able to explain what's going on here. Um, I presume that the reason you have an ID for everything except for the sex category is the fact that some states allow you to select what sex you want on the ID, not necessarily what you were at birth. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. I think that was the first thing that popped out to me. I was like, okay, good. They've taken care of that issue per se. Now, how much have you guys gotten much pushback against this from people within your area or others?
There's been a little bit of pushback. Billy compiled some rough numbers from the feedback that we've received thus far, and I can go over those numbers a little bit. And granted, this is as of the time he did this with, I think it was a day or two ago. Um, Nationwide, all the areas, there was a total of 402 responses. 258 of them were in support of this policy, 121 were opposed, and 23 were unclear as to what their stance was. So, just roughly, that's about 64% for, 30% against, 5.7% unclear. And those proportions do vary by area. It was a 50-50 split in Area 1. Um, it was 61 to 36 in Area 2, 16 to 10 in Area 3. So it is regional, what the thoughts are
Okay.
on this.
It seems like it almost, I mean, with those numbers, it almost reflects just the U.S. general population. It almost seems like, because it doesn't surprise me that Area One would be that way with Oregon and Washington. I don't know, maybe not, because I guess I would have expected Area Two. Okay, either way,
In
so a
area
little
two,
bit.
in area two specifically, this came up at the New Mexico sectional match, and it was one of the things that I've heard a lot from people in New Mexico about. And I don't know, a lot of the feedback from area two is from people who were really interested in this change happening, and I think people who are more interested in it are more likely to get feedback. So that's probably where a lot of the responses we got from area 2 come from, and why it kind of skews that way more than you might expect for the other rest of the demographics.
Okay, so you're saying people at the New Mexico State match were actually asking for this clarification?
Yeah, I think the person who won the ladies category at the New Mexico sectional last year in 25, this was like, I don't know this person. I wasn't at this match. What I have been told is that the winner of the lady category, um, there was some question if that person would be eligible under the new policy.
Okay, so if they went to IPSC and went to the World Shoot, they may not have been able to compete as a lady, is what I'm hearing.
Correct.
All right. Okay.
And just one other clarification, just because somebody um, leaned for or against this, it's not necessarily that they agreed or disagreed with the concept in general. Some people who were against it just felt it wasn't far enough. It wasn't robust enough based on the
Oh,
comments.
wow. Okay. All right. I'm going to write that down because that's a
Am I correct in my interpretation of that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I remember one in particular, quite lengthy, uh, wanted more restriction or validation. Uh, I have it top of my head, but you're right. There was a lot of pushback for more, and then there was a lot of other feedback that would prefer us, being the organization, to stay out of politics. Is, you know, I mean, I can understand that mindset and that thought as well too, but we is a larger picture, I guess, to look at with it.
Yeah, and I would say that it's not something that any of us here, or I think the org in general, is getting into because of politics, or that we are looking at the current political climate and trying to jump on any sort of bandwagon there. That this
Right.
actually has come up um, multiple times at major matches. It also is very relevant at local matches around the country, and we're getting feedback before we even made this like public for comment. We were getting feedback, at least I was, um, that this is something people were asking for and that they had encountered and wanted a change.
Well, and I had heard of a couple of matches where this was an issue, and that was before you and Billy ran for Area 6 and Area 2. So, yeah, I totally this is something that's been going on for a little bit. It's
Yeah.
probably overdue the clarification.
Yeah, it's something that we have discussed as a board and within the rules committee, of which I'm the chair of, all through 2025 and before I was on the board in 2024. This has been a topic of conversation. So, and it's not something to um, take lightly. There's a lot of things that needed to be looked into. I'm sure we'll touch some more on that. There's legal um, reviews and
Mhm.
ramifications involved in this potentially, um, and precedents that continue to be set nationwide that support this, um, but do not have enforcement powers in this realm exactly. I know we're going to touch on Title IX um, at some
Yeah.
point.
Which, if it goes the way I expect it to, that will actually alleviate a lot of the legal aspect of this for the organization. So,
It
Well, we're not
will,
taking any federal money,
yeah,
so Title
yeah.
IX doesn't apply.
No, it sets
it,
precedent, but it doesn't.
right.
It's not enforceable in this exact scenario. Like
It's
Ian
not,
said,
but
we're
it,
not taking federal money, so we don't comply with Title IX or have to comply.
yeah, you don't have to comply. But as a precedent, it gives you something to fall back on when if the Supreme Court says, yes, men have to be men, women have to be women in sports, at least that gives you some type of backing legally for support in a case if it does go forward. So you mentioned that this has been discussed for a while within the board. How united is the board in this proposal?
I'm not going to speak for the rest of the board. I'm going to speak individually, as I'm sure Ian and Billy will as well. There's been some contention um, in, I guess, the overall topic of conversation, as well as just the exposure, the legal exposure of the org by going down this route. Um, but I think it's the right road to go down for competitive equity of the ladies in our sport. And I'll let Billy and Ian speak to that as well, but I'm not going to speak for the opinions of the rest of the board.
Yeah, I agree with Leif on it. Yeah, for myself and the feedback that I've gotten from a considerable amount of people in Area 6, whether they went to the survey or not, is they wish that the organization, the board, would do something to maybe it's not a prevalent issue currently, but it could be. It's kind of like, why wait until something happens to fix it? Be proactive in nature, and also like Leif said, to protect the women in the sports, the integrity of their category. And I know legal got brought up in a lot of the comments, and we just kind of touched on it too, but I think what some people may be failing to look at holistically is the other side of that legal argument. When women sue the organization or bring legal action against the organization for failing to do something, I kind of had that in my mind as well, looking at all of this and listening, to a lot of the ladies and men alike.
Yeah, and there's a cop out solution to this, which I've never agreed with, but it's been thrown around that why don't you just eliminate categories altogether and then everyone competes against everyone? That's been thrown out there, and I don't think that's the answer whatsoever. I think the preservation of the ladies category and the protection of that category and all the categories is the right way to go.
I think Ian hit the nail on the head the other day on a podcast with his way he spoke about categories. I think he's done it the best that I've ever heard it.
What was
Yeah, I
that,
guess
Ian?
that the categories exist to allow competitors to compare themselves against the people that are, I don't know, most close to them in ability, similar to what classes exist for, A class, M class, GM, that kind of thing. That they exist to recognize there's a difference in ability and grip strength and speed and all sorts of things, just physical differences between people who are under 18, people over 55, over 70, right? I think we all have no question that if you are 12 years old, you're going to have less grip strength. If you are 65, you're not going to run as fast in general. There are outliers, of course, but there's a lot of value in the categories and allowing people to compare themselves and have like someone to go to a match and look to compete against. That if you show up in a match and you're always comparing yourself to Christian Seiler, like, oh, I shot 60% of Christian Seiler, you don't really know how good was that really. Like that might have been really good. 60% of him is probably actually really good.
Right.
But when you're looking at everybody else in the ladies category, or if you want to know if are you the best under 18 shooter that came to this match, you're gonna have to go through and filter, manually find all the names that you know are juniors or you know are seniors. And people are gonna do that in practice court to try to make this comparison anyway. I think there's a lot of value in recognizing the categories and allowing people to compete with people they're on equal footing with.
Okay. Now the two outliers in the categories are really the military and law enforcement because they're not age based. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think those ones exist because we recognize those are groups of people for which competitive shooting provides a lot of value, just in general. I know it's very often debated back and forth whether like, oh, cardboard targets don't shoot back, so why would a cop come to a shooting match? But I think we all do this, and we recognize that we're developing shooting skills, and that those skills are valuable, and we want to encourage people who carry guns for a living to develop their shooting skills. So those two categories are they exist for a different reason. There's no reason why being a cop makes you any worse at shooting. But we want to provide an avenue to encourage them to come out to these matches.
And the law
Okay.
enforcement category under the proposal actually expands the number of eligible law enforcement. It expands it from previously it was only full time, but the proposal includes part time and reserve with arrest powers as well.
Okay. I think that's good, actually.
That was Billy's recommendation.
Yeah,
Good recommendation, Billy.
Thanks. And like, so talking about that real quick, I think I tallied up the numbers. I don't know them off the top of my head, but there was quite a few comments in there that would agree or not address the overarching issue that we're here mostly talking about, but looking for like retired law enforcement or veteran. And so, these comments, no matter what it's about, I think the really, really important part for everybody to understand is leave them. Go in there and make them because we do see them. I understand it's a canned email response when I hit the little button that says send email, but I do read them. I know these two guys here read them. Probably everybody on the board reads them, and then we take them to heart and we look at them, and then we do data pulls and analysis on it, and hopefully we'll be able to do things going forward with more of the member input.
Is the feedback period over?
No, it closes end of the day
day.
on the 18th.
Okay, I didn't think it was over, but I couldn't tell a date, at least on the proposal.
Should be in the body of the announcement, I believe.
The website and the way the feedback whole system is set up is not the greatest.
No, we've got some work to do there.
Yeah.
Okay. So we mentioned law or legalese and different stuff. So have you guys consulted with the law firm under retainer just to make sure that this stands up to legal scrutiny? And part two of that would be, when I wrote the question down, it was fine, but this could be a sensitive topic too. Have you checked both Washington and Delaware to make sure that you're covered in both states?
I did consult with our Delaware corporate counsel on this, and their response was multifaceted and a lot of different roads you can go down. Essentially, what they said is if we wanted to, we could do a 50 state analysis of state laws in every single state, and that's exhaustive and extremely expensive.
Yeah.
And they did note the precedent that is continuing to be set on a federal level with the definitions of gender and sex at birth. And then they also noted that we could stipulate that if the policy or the rule conflicted with any state laws, that the state laws would override. And there's also an existing rule in our rule book, 3.3 applicability of rules, that outlines that local rules where the USPSA rules do not comply with legislation or legal precedent, the local rules can override the USPSA rules per the approval of the USPSA president. So if there is a situation, there's a jurisdiction where there's a really strict discrimination policy that's in place, discrimination laws, in those instances, the state rules would likely overrule. But that's something that would be reviewed on a case-by-case basis by the Category Eligibility Committee.
Now, in this case, would Dan be considered the president?
So this is the current bylaws. In the bylaws, we're working on getting finalized. That all that president language changes to director at large.
Okay.
So yes, that would be Dan.
So one of the questions I had written down was what was the percentages of support, but you guys kind of touched on it a little bit that it's regional. Are there any regions that were in the negative for the proposal? Or
none
has every
none of the regions are in the negative.
Okay.
The closest are like 50-50 split in area 1 is the closest one. And I will say that it's sort of one of the things I expect looking at a survey or looking at data like this. Like we do this for work a lot. The people who are going to submit feedback that is lengthy or take the time are going to be the people with a strong opinion, and it often means a negative opinion about something. When you look through a lot of the feedback we've gotten, the people who in support of this is sort of a one word agree or yes, I like this, go for it. Short kind of, they're just on board. They're very lengthy comments we've gotten are from people who disagree for whatever reason. So I think there is sort of a bias towards negativity that you get in when you're collecting feedback with something like this. So even for accounting for that, we're seeing an almost overwhelming majority um, for this proposal.
Now, again, going back to what was said earlier, some of that negativity is that it didn't go far enough.
Yeah, and some of that is like it didn't go far enough, or they like the general idea but have other issues with the exact implementation. Whether they have a problem with 2X chromosomes being part of it, or some other sort of concern with the particular language used, not concern with just the overall idea.
Well, and that goes to, so we'll talk about that now. One of the questions I had written down is it's like 1.7% of the population is intersex. So they have, and the number one intersex, I don't even know what I want to call it. It's Klinefelter syndrome, but it's an XXY. It's someone with an XXY. So they're basically a female, but they have a Y chromosome, which kind of throws everything out of whack. So have you guys discussed these types of situations and how they're going to be dealt with?
We've discussed it a little bit, but I think the most important thing is going to be fielding the composition of this category eligibility committee um, with experts within our membership to be able to discuss these situations if and when they arise. It's going to
Has
be.
that already
Go ahead.
has that already been looked at? Like, who had you already have names of people in mind that could fill this committee?
Not entirely right now. Getting the member feedback first was very important. Um, Getting the policy approved is the next step, and then reaching out to the membership for people that would be interested in serving on this committee would be the step after that. And it would be composed just like all of our other committees. There'd be at least one board member as chair and or vice chair of the committee, and then the rest would be comprised of members of the organization.
Okay.
And the committee will really exist as sort of our way out for all of these edge cases that we can't cover all of that with our policy. And when there's questions, and there are always going to be questions, the committee will be there to handle those situations.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, there's no way to cover every circumstance
No.
under law. You know what I mean? So that's why I almost feel like when you talk to the law firm, they probably are like, make it as basic as simple so that, you know, it's easier to go one way or the other with and not very complicated. So there are phases to this. So the hearing or the proposal portion of this ends Sunday night. This will be going out in the morning. I'm going to post this tomorrow so people can get a chance to listen to what you guys have to say. And then if they haven't given feedback, maybe they will. But so the proposal ends Sunday night. Monday, you'll have all the results. What's the next step for this?
Well,
And time frame?
Then it gives us a week before the January board meeting for the board to discuss all the survey results, compare, contrast, go through all of that, and see if we are at a point where we can put this up to vote at the January board meeting, if we're confident in the feedback that we've gotten and incorporate any feedback that is necessary to incorporate into this.
Oh, so it literally could be voted on in 10 days from now.
It could be, unless we determine it's just not ready.
Okay.
But we're trying to get it voted on with the rules audit that's also going to be voted on at the January board meeting.
Okay.
And whatever form this is in, if we vote, just hypothetically, if the board votes to approve this at the January board meeting, we're going to learn lessons over 2026, any holes that might need to be addressed in this policy that we can then add on to for the next year. Because I'm sure, like you're saying, we're going to come across situations we did not anticipate coming across, or we might not come across many situations at all.
Right. Hopefully the latter.
No.
None. None would be best. So the word I was looking for earlier tonight was distinction. So the distinction here too is this is not part of the bylaws. This is just a policy, which is much easier to change and adjust and fix as needed versus a bylaw.
Well, this is in the rule book, so this would be
Okay.
a rules change, and then there is a charter that goes along with this for the category eligibility committee that would be formed concurrently with the approval of this.
Okay. My next question might be considered a little bit more complex here. When you guys have to go into executive session because the investigative committee on some fraction has met and they're giving you the results, do you guys, and I'm not asking for any specifics or any certain situation, I assume you guys typically take whatever the committee recommends. If you have this category eligibility committee that comes back with a recommendation due to a situation that has occurred, do you expect that will go the same way, that you guys are basically going to take whatever recommendation they have? Or is this going to be something that would be debated?
Well, all the recommendations are discussed within the board, and rarely do the recommendations get changed in any way from what is voted in as the final item. So I would expect that any recommendations by this committee would be discussed and taken as is by the board and voted on by the board. I can't think of anything in the last year where we, as a board, did not take a recommendation from a committee and vote for it and vote to pass it as it was presented to us. But I can only speak for the last year.
Dave, I think along those lines too, separating the policy recommendations from any type of recommendations involving an individual. I, I think that as the board, we would each look at the facts and the circumstances surrounding that individual, right? And the recommendation may be correct. We may think it needs to be modified, and yes, that would be discussed, and then come to a consensus. So, yeah, what Leif said, yeah, I get it, I understand, but I think maybe you were asking it from a more of a all around perspective, not just a policy. Hey, we need to change this wording or that wording, but also from if the master director refers an individual to the committee for failing to provide documentation, or comes out that the individual was incorrectly in the category maliciously, then I think that would, all the facts and circumstances and the totality of everything would have to be looked at individually as a board member, and then spoken and discussed, and everything, the process has gone through that way. So I think just to caveat that just a little bit.
Yeah, this is something that Billy can speak to more, or confirm, or tell me I'm wrong. But what the discipline committee has experienced over the last couple years, and over the last year that I've observed, is creating a consistent kind of tiered approach of sanctions or punishments based on the nature and severity of an infraction, and making sure that we're consistently applying those
standard
remedies. and the
Okay.
same will have to be formulated within the category eligibility committee. We'll have to create this equals this and a tiered approach to what the sanctions might be for certain infractions. So that's the one thing that we do discuss when a recommendation is made by a committee is, are we staying consistent with what we've administered in the past, and are we comfortable with being consistently administering the same thing in the future? So we want to make sure that we're kind of paving a road that future committees will have kind of a framework how to consistently carry through what we've already done.
Well, and let me just make sure that I'm tracking properly too here. That if a match director is asking for information and refers it to the eligibility committee, then whatever their findings are, I assume the board is going to have to not certify, but at least stand behind whatever their findings are and what the situation is and whether they should be in a different category than what they initially registered as. Is that how this whole process is going to work?
Yes, that's how I envision it working.
Okay.
Yes. And I did not want to put undue burden on the match directors here. The match directors deal with enough for zero pay and lots of headaches as it is. I was not going to make them the enforcement arm of any of these types of rules. So, match director may request documentation. Match director may refer to the eligibility committee, and then the match director is done with it if they want to be done with it.
Is there, I know that, well, I don't know. I'm not a match director. So let me change that. I don't know. I've heard that there are areas within the website where match directors can go to see who's eligible and who isn't to shoot a USPSA match. All right. So maybe maybe they've been banned for a year because they dropped their gun and it fired across the range into another bay, something like that.
Thanks for bringing that up.
Sorry. I'm just saying that because everybody in the world knows about that.
Yeah, that was my match.
Oh, I did not realize that, but how ironic. Oh, Alanis Morissette would love me right now. But my point here is that what was my point here? Where was I going with that? Now y'all got me combobulated.
Match directors have the ability to look up eligibility of competitors.
Oh yeah. So in these types of situations, would that also be on the website for match directors to be able to go, oh, this individual's been to the eligibility committee. This individual's supposed to be registered as A, not B. Or does that open up a door you guys don't want to?
That's something we'll have to discuss, the mechanics of that, and yeah, I can't give you a definitive answer on that right now.
Okay, all right, fair enough.
I know one of a couple of the comments off the top of my head mentioned something about a lack of a better term, a repository or whatever will have you. Say somebody is asked to validate with their birth certificate, they do so, everything's good. Then there should hopefully be a way for that to be not an issue again.
Yes.
Words are escaping me right now. It was an interesting day at work today. Like a database or whatnot. But then we start running into issues of privacy and whatnot and everything else. So, I think there's, like Leif said, it's one of those bridges we're going to have to cross sooner before later, but maybe as we figure things out, the path will illuminate better.
Yeah, and I think we have seen some concern that we're going to take your birth certificate, you got to submit the actual thing or at least an image of it, and we're going to keep those records. And I don't think that's at all what we're trying to do. The USPSA doesn't want to collect a bunch of your personal information and try to store that and all the headaches that come with that. If this comes up, you'll show it to that match director. The rest of the matches at that club or that range should be solved there. I think if we start to see issues where the same person is getting questioned repeatedly and that's becoming a problem and we need to head that off, then that's one of the things I think the committee can address later. But for this policy, we're not retaining any of your personal information in any way.
Well, and part of the reason I brought it up too is you don't want that person to constantly have to produce something. So almost like if the match director has asked for that information and has received it, so he doesn't even go to the eligibility committee. And it's like, oh yeah, everything's good to go. I almost feel like there should be an avenue for the match director to maybe notify the category eligibility committee of the person and their member number to say, hey, if the situation comes up, this person did produce it and showed that they are good to go. And maybe, there's a way to prevent it at another match somewhere else. You know what I mean? It's complicated, I know, but at the same time, it's also keeping those people from, and when I say those people, I mean a legitimate male or woman who doesn't want to constantly get harassed about whether or not they are male or female.
And I think one of the things that we should maybe make a point about is that this isn't just the ladies category where this comes up and has come up. There are instances of people competing in the military and law enforcement category when they were not otherwise eligible. Um, I've I've only been told about this. I haven't actually seen it personally, but um, people who are security guards considering themselves law enforcement, or
Mm.
states where corrections officers aren't actually sworn officers with arrest powers competing in law enforcement. Um, Retired military service members competing in the military category, which is something we might address, but under our current and this proposed policy, that doesn't allow you to compete in the category. So verifying your category isn't just for the ladies category. That there are people who are
It's for
trying to
everybody.
circumvent the policy for other categories as well.
And Billy should not be competing as active duty military. So I'm just putting that out there now.
I'm not.
I'm kidding. But yeah, retired should not. It should be active duty only, in my opinion. Let me see if I've asked you guys all of the questions I had up here. I kind of jumped around a little bit. I think I've asked everything, including the not enough one.
Yeah, so just
So
in regards to the not enough one, um, I don't envision USPSA going down the road of blood testing individuals. That's
good.
not something we should be involved in. So that kind of keys into the not enough. Um, I think this can be handled in almost all situations through a committee investigation and recommendation.
Are you any of you aware of IPSC ever doing that to anybody, making them take a
So
blood test?
that was the problem with the IPSC policy is there's a rule, but there's no method of verification or enforcement, at least not outlined in their rule book. And that's why I didn't want to propose just blindly adopting the IPSC policy. You'll notice there's verbiage in here from the IPSC policy, but without an enforcement or verification mechanism, it's pointless. It's just words.
But at the same time, we're not an the USPSA is not international. It's a national organization that will allow international people to shoot within the organization in their matches, but we fall under US law. So it has to withstand the scrutiny of US law. You know what I mean? And
Right.
some of that stuff, it's like, I don't think that would go very well. So,
Yeah.
You have to have your own rules that exist legally underneath our law. So I didn't like the idea of just blindly adopting IPSC rules. And I'm like, that's an international organization.
And I think regarding the enforcement of this, there's a lot of things in our sport that rely on the integrity of the competitor. I mean, how easy is it to use different ammo just for chrono, or bring your short mag to chrono, or go switch guns at the safe table without telling anybody, moving your stuff around on your belt, like taping a target
Right.
because you saw your buddy had a no shoot and you going to get rid of that before it gets scored, right? There's a lot of ways you can cheat very easily in this sport, and we sort of approach everything with the assumption that you're being honest until proven otherwise. So this is one of the situations where I think we would rely on the integrity of competitors for the most part until the point where the eligibility committee has to get involved, the same way the discipline committee gets involved with other forms of cheating.
I feel like I don't need to say this, but I'll say it. And just because someone may not be in the correct category doesn't necessarily mean they're cheating. It could mean that Billy Harrington was thinking, I just retired out of the Army. I can be in the military category, and then find out later, like, no, you have to be active duty, not retired, type of a thing. So it doesn't always just mean people are cheating.
Oh, and absolutely. And that's why there is no policy that says, oh, if you check the wrong box in practice score accidentally, then
We're firing you.
You get your membership terminated and we take all your money. You can never shoot again. Right? That's it's absolutely not that. There's an investigation for a reason. There's the first step of the MD just going like, hey, or when you go to registration at any match, they ask you like, are you these categories? And if you show up and you are clearly not 12 years old, but you check the junior box, they're going to probably just solve it right there for your registration.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Somebody on my local match squad every month, at some point during the match, changes me to a junior lady every single time, and I don't catch it until the tablet comes back around to me to score a stage. I'm like, come on, every time.
Oh, that's funny.
Come on,
that's
lady.
a funny joke.
You know it.
Oh man, hi junior lady every month.
Yeah. Well, the
thing
problem
is he's
was
not
a
even
couple
winning.
years ago, it actually got submitted that way because I didn't catch it, and then somebody else saw it and they raised issue about it. It's like, okay.
Oh wow, goodness! And it's just your local match.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's everything that I had. I feel like I don't feel like there's much more we can cover with this topic. But was there anything that maybe you had a comment on earlier that you forgot to say that you want to say now before we close this thing out?
I just want to say that I think we're really not trying to exclude anybody with this policy change. That one of the things that people should note is there is no men's category. It's not about separating people into men and women or trying to differentiate you based on whatever somebody's gender expression is, however they want to present themselves to the world, what the name they want to use, how they want other people to refer to them. Like anybody is welcome to come out and shoot just as they always have been. That these categories exist to recognize physical differences and to group people in that way. And I think we are actually recognizing that there is a physical difference in people who were born as ladies, and there's statistical evidence that Jay Slater put together in a great post on his Patreon, that's free and you can go look at it, that finds a lot of convincing evidence that there is a physical difference in our sport between men and women competitors, and that it actually does make a difference. And changing the category to what we're proposing here, I think recognizes that, but categories are always optional. You're free to show up at the match, not choose any categories, like have whatever name you want. Like, please come shoot. We're happy to have you. This isn't trying to exclude anybody. It's just sort of trying to recognize the physical advantage you have or physical disadvantage you might have at being a lady.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Ian, that was a great one. I was trying to figure a way to explain to people kind of the same thing he said. We're not trying to exclude. Just trying to keep the sanctity of categories there. And can I backtrack for 1 second, Dave? I did a little looking today at work, and I had some breaks, and then when I got home, a few of the comments, and you mentioned it too, the Kleinfelters. So if you look at the governing standards, the International System for Human Cytogenic Nomenclature, they overwhelmingly say that the karyotype sex is reported by a sex chromosome complement. A Y chromosome is male. So the Second X, sure, it's there, but that's a male. The absence of the Y is a female. So I'm not a geneticist. I don't claim to be, and I haven't stayed at a Holiday Inn Express for a long time, but I've got the peer-reviewed academic research to show it, where I looked over for about an hour or so today. And they don't even report as intersex because they're classified as male from the reports through the ISCN. Even the mosaic type of Klinefelters. But you get to chimerism, the true sex discordant merging of infusion of chimerism. That's when you have an individual with XX and XY, but they're separate, if that makes sense. It was usually two fetuses that fused together. Like, I got really deep into it today looking at that because I wanted to know too, because it was brought up numerous times about phenotype karyotypes in some of the comments. Now I'm sure I'll catch some comments back about it, and I may have missed something. But when I see the international standard from the ISCN, for me, it's kind of hard to refute that the presence of the X means the male, regardless of external appearance or genitalia, because even in some cases, underdeveloped, not developed, looking externally one way, but stereotypically with the Y, that person would be a male. So
Right. Well, no wonder you couldn't think of words earlier.
Yeah.
No wonder you had a bad day at work. It's a lot of big words to be looking at. But yeah, I mean, yes, I mean, there are people who they didn't even know that they were that until they actually had an autopsy after they were dead. So yeah,
it goes undiagnosed in a huge amount of the population.
100%. Yep.
That are affected with that. I didn't realize it was not so distinguishable until I started reading a little bit more on it. It got to be I don't want to say a rabbit hole, but it got to be somewhat educational and interesting. My head hurts a little bit now, but I mean, I'm better for it.
That's why you create an eligibility committee and let them get the headaches.
Yeah.
Which I am not volunteering for. So
sure you are.
Well, gentlemen, if that's it, anybody else got any last thoughts?
I do not.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming on. And again, this will be punched out tomorrow so everybody can listen.
Thanks for having us,
Dave.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate you.
You're welcome.